Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. We're starting off today's episode here at the Super Smoker that we built in the last episode, and I gotta say, I like the way this thing is performing so far, with one exception, which we'll get to in a second. But if I climb the scaffold over here, I can show you that the cart is still working pretty well. It's managing to clear out the contents of this chest, and that is ultimately draining the kelp supply we have up here. My main concern after I built this was that the backlog of kelp was too much for it to handle. Even with the double smoking speed that we have with these things, I was a little bit worried that the system was going to become overloaded and the kelp farm was going to produce more than this system could handle. But happily, even though those two hoppers up there were backed up at the time we actually built this thing, it looks like it's actually draining the supply, and anything that's new that's coming in isn't going to completely overwhelm the smoker. The problem comes with the minecart distributing all of these items around the smokers, because the hoppers are actually pretty full. They are completely full, in fact, all the way around. And while the smokers are obviously cooking stuff at twice the speed of a furnace, they aren't getting rid of these items nearly as fast as we are delivering them. So what I've decided to do is expand this setup and add 8 additional smokers to it, in the hopes that the minecart distributing things around 16 smokers instead of 8 not only doubles our output, but hopefully reduces the amount of time the minecart is just idling in this circuit ready to drop off one piece of kelp every time the smoker is done with it. To my estimation, it takes about 3 whole circuits before the smoker is ready to receive another item, possibly even 4. So yeah, we are actually seeing a little bit of wait time here for the minecart to drop stuff off. So what I'm going to do is lock it up there once it's ready to return to the station here. We're just going to pop a block of dirt in front of it or something like that, and that's going to keep it up there until we can make some improvements to the track and include a few more smokers in the equation. So that just requires me to wait until the hopper minecart is ready to be refilled. Should be any second now. There we go, and I've missed my chance. Nope, there we go. That should keep it in place. Perfect. Right, there we go. I was a little bit worried I'd just fallen off the scaffold. These things are kind of difficult to stay up on when you're just building a pillar like that. But anyway, that should give us the opportunity we need to add in a few more smokers. And then all we'll need to do is add in a second repeater to this circuit and move it a little bit further back. So it's still detecting when the hopper minecart is empty, but it just delays how long until that track switches and it makes another circuit. So this should be nice and straightforward to do. And yes, it does bug me that this whole thing is off-center. I'm sorry to anybody else who is slightly tweaked by that, but don't worry, it's all good. We can, at the very least, cover this up with a nice-looking deck layer up here, and we can probably put in a bunch of other details into the ship that are going to make it look fantastic, but the smoker section here is probably just going to stay like this for the foreseeable future, at least. Now, if we take this away, we can move the powered rails a little further down. I'll need a few more of those out of my redstone box. So we're going to need to move these 2 redstone blocks so that they're in the middle here and the signal reaches all the way to both ends of the powered rail section, but that's fine because we're moving this circuit over as well. It still needs to run into the same point, so we can keep this down here. We just need to move it down a little bit. And we can also move it out of the way of the hoppers that way, because one concern I had was that the redstone signal here was going to block off some of the hoppers. It's not going to do that all the time, though, because, as you know, the signal is only going to be there for a very short amount of time, so we shouldn't need to worry too much about that. So as before, we'll have a redstone comparator here, we'll have a couple of repeaters here, and a 4-tick plus a 1-tick delay might be all we need here. Let me quickly check that. We'll need a little bit more redstone dust as well, but we can send a practice minecart around here before we send the one over around that has the contents. But that's still feeding into the block with the redstone torch on it right there. We need to move these 2 guys just to make sure the full section of the powered rail is completely powered. Let's put it there and there. Looks like that's all functioning fine. And we need a minecart. Do I have one in the redstone box right now? I don't think I do. I've got enough iron, though, so I'll just make another one while I'm here. Actually, it's not going to work like that at all, because it was just a regular minecart, and it needs contents to be detected by the comparator circuit. So you know what? We'll just loose the kelp minecart on here, and the worst that can happen is that it goes back to the loading station up here. So let's give this a try. Go around the circuit once. I'll need to get out of the way. Yep, looks like the delay is actually perfect. We've actually got that on 2 ticks right now on the second repeater. And yep, looks like that's doing everything it's supposed to. Fantastic. Good. We have a doubly large smoker setup now. Now all we need is twice the fuel and some hoppers to go from here into the input chest. Perfect. In fact, that last hopper there could basically just go straight into the chest, and that way it's not bottlenecking the supply through that hopper in the middle, which I don't think it would. I don't think we're quite going to be outputting that much here, but you never know. At least I've now got enough dried kelp from the other smokers that I can turn some of that into fuel blocks, which is the whole point of this exercise to begin with, and I've already started fueling some of these smokers with the dried kelp blocks we've been creating here. So let's get this thing started. I can probably put a little bit of coal in each of these to begin with, just to get the ball rolling, as it were. But remember, each kelp block is going to smelt 20 items, so we have a pretty reliable fuel source there. We can take the coal out of these furnaces once we've produced a little bit more. This chest on this side is doing pretty well too. Looks like we're in business, folks. And yes, I still need to add in a fuel line that's going to deliver the fuel to these smokers as we go, but I think I might even be able to do that with a bunch of hoppers and some chests. Considering how much fuel kelp blocks actually provide to these furnaces, it would be simple enough just to fill up a double chest of kelp blocks, attach that to each of these smokers, and then it would be providing kelp in perpetuity. We might even, in the fullness of time, need to add in a few more storage modules to this, add in another couple of hoppers and chests going down into the into the ground underneath the ship, just to make sure that we have enough storage for the amount of kelp this thing is going to be producing. I think at that point the bottleneck would really be how much kelp the farm itself is making, considering how fast this system could run if we let it. But in the meantime, at least we know that these hoppers have been able to burn off a little bit of the backlog here, and the system is actually delivering less kelp than the furnaces themselves, the smokers themselves, are burning. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we need, because eventually it's actually going to run out of kelp in here, and the system will be delivering fresh kelp every single time. There's probably a balance we could reach mathematically where the timings are perfect enough and the capacity of the hopper minecart is perfect enough that it would be smelting 20 new kelp per kelp block every time and no fuel would be wasted. But considering the amount that these things can produce, I'm not too worried about waste at this stage. I think we should be able to get on just fine making a little bit more kelp block than we actually need. I mean, just while I've been fiddling with this and sat here, it's actually delivered enough kelp to make another stack of dried kelp blocks, so we can fill up this next furnace. Perfect. Okay, I think it's time to move on. For the remainder of this episode, we're going to take a quick look at chorus fruit farming, because this is something that I've been meaning to cover since we went to the end, but I haven't really found the right time, so feels like we may as well cover it today. Chorus fruit is actually pretty easy to farm. All you need are chorus flowers and endstone, and they can be farmed in any dimension. It works in the overworld, the end, or the nether, so pretty easy to get a hold of. The reason to farm chorus fruit, other than for teleporty surprise food, is to get yourself some purple blocks, because popped chorus fruit can be crafted into purple blocks, which themselves aren't used all that often, but if you want to build with something kind of pale purple, especially considering they've got slightly revamped textures in this new update, it's probably worth knowing how to farm them. In particular, there is a change in this update that makes it slightly easier for players to farm chorus fruit, the main thing being that chorus flowers were previously quite difficult to obtain. If you recall how chorus fruits grow in the end, you end up with a plant that grows out from a single chorus flower, and it'll grow quite frequently. There are ways to speed up this process, but they are far too complicated for this tutorial. Instead, we're going to plant a few of these, probably a couple of blocks apart to allow them room to grow, and as the stems grow, you will see them split off into several different chorus flowers that start to reach out in various different directions. In fact, the most effective way to farm these is probably in a slightly offset grid, in the same way that you'd build something like a sugarcane farm. So instead of building them in a straight row like this, you probably want to go 2 steps to the side and then 1 step back to allow for those arms that reach out and grow in different directions to branch out slightly more effectively. So let's do that with our next set, and once these have grown a little bit further, then we can kind of have them follow suit. Now, if you're just after growing chorus flowers, then one thing you can do is place a block a couple of blocks above the chorus flower head as it grows, and it will end up growing around that into usually 2 or 3 separate things. Now, the main thing to avoid is to block off a chorus flower, because once it realizes that there's nowhere else for it to grow, the flower will close up and it will stop growing. And once they get to a certain height, they will often close up automatically because the plant doesn't want to grow any higher. But if you want chorus flowers to grow in large numbers, then it's usually a good idea to build a farm something like that. As you can see, this plant here has started to sprout off into different directions. It's the first of our plants to grow a second flower. Looks like that one over there has done so as well. It's completely random when they do this, aside from occasional circumstances in which you can manipulate it. So it's usually a good idea to just grow a bunch of them. And of course, if you want to harvest the chorus fruit as well, what you're looking for is the stems, because if you break a chorus plant like so, it ends up dropping a bunch of chorus fruit. What it doesn't drop is the flower from the top. So up until this update, the flowers have had to be harvested manually. But as of the 1.14 update, a really neat quality of life feature has come into play, where you can shoot the chorus flowers down with arrows, which I think is a fantastic addition. This can also be done with a trident if you want to do this with a trident that has loyalty attached to it, so that you can just recall the trident to you and do that this way. It's a lot of fun, actually, using these things as target practice, but primarily it's a way to avoid the painful business of having to pillar up and harvest those high-reaching chorus flowers if you're building them in a farm like this. But this mechanic allows us to make chorus farms a lot more automatic, because all you really need to do is shoot down each of the chorus flowers, which can be fun target practice unless you completely whiff a shot like I just did, and then all you need to do is pour a bucket of water or get water streams activated via dispenser or let out from behind trapdoors, and you can harvest the fruit that way. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to make a relatively small scale chorus fruit farm that we can use both as target practice and as a means of harvesting these flowers infinitely. Okay, so this thing is looking a little crowded now, but this is the setup I've got, and some of the chorus plants are still growing. A few of them have reached their preferred maximum height, and they are withering. The flowers actually, you can see in the subtitles, it says that the flowers wither instead of closing up. But anyway, what we've got here is kind of similar to the setup we had with the Netherwart farm. We've got a set of water sources back here being held back only by iron trapdoors. The main thing for using iron trapdoors is if you happen to hit them with an axe or something like that, you're not going to break them and then flood out the entire farm. But you probably won't need to be swinging your axe much in here, because the whole point of this is that the water will flood down this section. We've got a platform that's 7 blocks long here, allowing the water to flow down onto the next section, which is 8 blocks long, leading finally to these 2 water streams directing the output of the farm into a single hopper, into a single chest. Now, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, we might have to enlarge the storage of that chest, but it kind of makes sense to do it this way for now. So, in order to get some of these higher up flowers, if you don't want to shoot them all from the ground, I recommend using a bit of scaffolding, because it's nice and easy to place a temporary platform up here, get a high enough vantage point, and then from here you can just systematically shoot down all of the flowers using your projectile weapon of choice, whether that's a trident, a crossbow, or just a regular bow. In fact, it might even be possible to automate that after a fashion, so that you could use dispensers to fire maybe downwards onto the flowers here to make sure that you actually hit them all, instead of like firing across, which would be guaranteed to miss a few. Potentially, if you just had like a square of dispensers up here firing arrows downwards at once, or maybe even if you wanted to do some fun stuff with mobs, you could trick skeletons into firing at you or at some kind of other mob, whether it be an iron golem or a snow golem or something, and they could take down the chorus flowers for you. Considering how accurate skeletons are on hard mode, it might be kind of more precise to do it that way. I don't know. I'm interested to see if it's possible to do stuff like that in future. But for now, we can keep taking all of these down manually, and then once we've done shooting down all of the flowers, ideally this is going to take less than 5 minutes to do, because otherwise some of the flowers would start to despawn once they've just been sat there on the ground for a while. But we can just flush the system out by flicking the lever at the back there, and that would sweep all of the flowers and all of the chorus fruit down into that water stream to be collected in the chest, and we can replant the flowers from there. I might actually take the scaffolding tower over to the other side because I feel like that's getting a little bit tricky to spot some of the flowers that are on this other side, and the chorus plants just grow in such a tangled way, which looks very cool, especially when you're out in the end, but can be a little bit difficult to spot the flowers once you're trying to shoot them all down. There we go. I think we got pretty much all of them. I think it's probably just time to flush the farm out. If we missed a couple, that's fine, because we can always just replant these and grow some more flowers. A couple of the flowers ended up on the back here, so you could probably build a larger kind of structure around this thing if you wanted to keep them all contained. But all we need to do is flick this lever, and the water breaks absolutely everything and washes it all down into... Hang on a second. Oh, I know what I've done, because that technically counts as the 8th block, so it's not going to flush it all the way down. Well done. I need to rebuild some of this. For now, let's just sweep some of this down manually with a bucket of water. Oh, that's slightly embarrassing. Should probably have checked that before I showed it off on camera. But yeah, we can sweep all of this into a water stream down the end there, and then hopefully it'll all collect up. We can replant the farm, and we can resize this first platform here. And instead of moving all of this section that way, all I did was move this section this way a little bit and shorten this platform here. So that's now 7 blocks, including the block the water source starts on, so a 6-block long platform here. And then we still have an 8-block long platform there, because that just needs to get flushed down into this system right there. There we go. And from that first harvest, we actually got quite a few chorus flowers and chorus fruit, so we've got plenty of stuff that we can replant. And if you wanted to size this up, all you'd need to do would be to just make the area of end stone a little bit larger. In fact, if you wanted to plant this kind of a little bit more systematically, you could probably just put end stone blocks here and there. There's a lot of end stone out there, so don't worry about like not being able to use enough of it. There's plenty more to go around. But if you wanted to make this a little bit more organized, you could just plant individual blocks of end stone here and there that are definitely the spots you would plant the chorus flowers on every time. Personally, I'm going for a bit more of a random approach. I'm just kind of placing them wherever I want to at this stage, because farming all of this stuff is not super necessary to me right now, but who knows, I might want to use some purple blocks in future, so it'd be nice to have a renewable supply of them. This should work a little better this time. Let's take out all of the flowers from the top here. I put a semi-permanent scaffolding tower here at the back, and if you go up a little bit higher, you can get a better vantage point on some of these flowers. Some of them have closed up a little bit prematurely, simply because they didn't really have any room to grow. They do that typically when you've got stuff on either side of them, so it is possible to force them to close up, but for the most part, they're not going to grow any higher than that. If you want them to grow higher, then you need to make sure they have a nice open space around them. So in the grand scheme of things, maybe this farm needs to be a little bit wider and a little bit less crowded if we want to get the maximum amount of flower output from these, as well as the maximum amount of chorus fruit. And specifically for this farm, it might be a good idea to have a bow with mending, seeing as the other enchantments wouldn't really count, but doing this over and over again is running down the durability on my bow a little bit. And if I want to save this one for combat and not have to reproduce it so often, then potentially a bow with mending and no other enchants would probably be a good idea. One more flower to take care of over there. I love the fact that you can shoot out of scaffolding. Like, scaffolding is such a minimal contact block. It's actually really useful for stuff like this. One more flower over there. There we go. Okay, I think I got it. Now, all we need to do is reach out of here and open the trapdoors, and all of that stuff floods down into the collection system. Fantastic. I think I do need to put a set of stairs over the top of the chest there, and around the outside these walls probably need to be a little bit higher. Maybe we need something to kind of shield the redstone over here from the stuff popping off onto it. But in the grand scheme of things, we have ourselves a pretty neat little chorus farm here, and yep, all of the stuff is flowing in. We got plenty of chorus fruit coming through. Perfect. Here's something weird I discovered, though. You can't actually cook chorus fruit in a smoker. Like, it won't let me shift-click that into the smoker interface. I can place it in there manually, but if I try to cook it, it does nothing, which seems a little bit weird considering that the chorus fruit is a food and the smoker is meant to process food. However, the output of smelting chorus fruit isn't a food. It's popped chorus fruit, which you can't eat. You can only use it to turn it into building blocks, into end rods, into purple blocks, that kind of thing. So that's probably the main reason you would want a chorus fruit farm in the first place, by the way, is for end rods. But even so, it's not possible to smelt them super fast like it is with the kelp. You will need a regular furnace setup for this. And while that might seem a little strange because of the fact that these are food when they go in, the smoker only processes things that are food when they come out, if that makes sense. So just to clear up any confusion about that, because the rules of the smoker might seem a little bit strange. If you go into the creative mode inventory, by the way, chorus fruit doesn't even show up under the food section. It shows up under miscellaneous. So if nothing else, that should be your guarantee that chorus fruit is not intended to be a food that you smoke in the smoker. And I hope that clears that up for you. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. A little bit of chorus fruit farming, a little bit of something different. A few technical projects this week I think should be a lot of fun. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.